Greetings! You have reached another episode of CNotes, where we take the knowledge of books and find ways to flow it into currency. My name is Sharvie Kennedy, and today it brings me great pleasure that you clicked on this link today, because I look forward to sharing with you some things that I took in my life, that what I've learned from a life of a phenomenal trailblazer, of someone who is known as the first writer. It is Phillis Wheatley. And I would just like to say it was so phenomenal on how I found her. I was reading poetry through Sonia Sanchez, Gwendolyn Brooks, Paul Robeson, and I saw a lot of common reference to Phillis Wheatley. So why not just read about the person that we know in Black history that made some type of accomplishment and did something, instead of us just writing it down? Let's dive into it. So that's what I did, and I'm telling you, it was a treat. Phillis Wheatley was 8 when she was stolen from Senegal, and when she arrived in Boston around the 1760s, she was purchased. The family that purchased her was called the Wheatleys, John and Susan, and then the boat that they took her and brought her to Boston was called Phillis. So hence her name, Phillis Wheatley, was not even a name that was naturally given to her. So because of that alone, I am going to, going forward, refer to her as, I will say, Madam Poetry. I like that. Madam Poetry. Yes. So Madam Poetry, when she was stolen, brought over here and bought, was around 8, and she was taught of writing and reading, which at that time we know was illegal, but masters can do whatever they want to with their property. So they taught her how to read and write. But what they didn't think was it taking a life of its own, because at certain points she was corresponding with George Washington. She dedicated her writings to Benjamin Franklin, who was also known to enjoy her writings. She was actually an international writer. Her works were more appreciated overseas in London than what they were in the States. And that reason was because we learned through this book called The Poems of Phillis Wheatley, which was published in 1966. It was under the University of North Carolina Press, where they did a compiling of all of her poetry and also a small autobiography. So that's where a lot of my reference to how I know about Madam Poetry comes into play, and what I know about her poetry because of this one book. And overseas, she was appreciated because that family, the Wheatleys, they were loyalists. And keep in mind, at this time in the 1760s, that was right on the verge of the American Revolution. It was during that time of this major conflict, and she was in Boston. So she's in the midst of all of this. Around that time, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of confusion. And I believe that that family capitalized on what was going on and used it as a focal point in the writings of Madam Poetry. And we see that because in her writings, it's a lot of death. I mean, there's eulogies, there's obituaries, there's poetry that discusses the transition from the earth to the heavens, or the earth to the afterlife. Their family was a bit religious. She was baptized as a Christian. So at one point in the beginning, her poetry was about going to heaven. And then later on, she did references to afterlife, to where it was questioned, was she Christian or was she atheist? But we don't have too much of that information to be able to determine how Madam Poetry had the narrative of her life. What I learned from reading about what I learned from this woman and from the works that she put out was that we have to write our own narrative. It's very important for, after you are no longer here, that your story is told by your words, not through what your mama and them said about you, not through what somebody remember about you, but what did you think about yourself? Whether you're happy with yourself or not happy with yourself, who is the person to tell your story? You are. Who's better? Nobody. So there's not that many autobiographies in the world, because it doesn't click that maybe I'm worth writing about, or maybe I'm not interesting enough to where somebody would read about me. Well, I'm here to tell you that you are important. You're here. You're here and you brought some type of something with you on why you chose to be here. Why your parents got together and you being here, that's important. Whether you're a wife or whether you're a husband, a mother, a father, you're here. You are important. Write your own story. Because what's going to happen, unlike Madam Poetry, who didn't get a chance to write her story, she's writing about everybody else but herself, because by the time it came to maybe her understanding her own value, it was too late. She died at 31. She had children, 3 children, and they died before her. So that brings me to another lesson. What are you writing into existence? Or what are you speaking into existence? Because if you're the author of your life, what are you saying about yourself? What are you instilling in yourself? So that inspired me to go, I know we speak things into existence, but I'm going to be more proactive about that. I'm going to be ahead of the curve on that. So not only am I going to commit to writing my own autobiography, I am going to speak my life into existence. This is my life. I control this. Not the circumstances around me, but I am going to control my narrative. Madam Poetry was denied that, not just because she was a slave. Well, a lot of it, was because she was a slave. At a certain point, when her masters died, they did will that she could have her own life when they no longer had use for her, because they would be in their afterlives. Of course, not before she wrote a eulogy or an obituary about them. That was their last request from this slave, which she did. And it was admired by a lot of people because her writing was the foundation and the epitome of British language. So this was also right before the time that Noah Webster, Benjamin Franklin, and others got together to say, we're America. We need to have an American language. So she was profound because she was the last of that writers field where they embraced the Great British writings, that language. So I'm here to say that let's learn from this. Let's learn to write your own story, and let's learn to speak your life into existence. And I guarantee that that can help you make some kind of flow in your life to where it's turning into whatever flow that you want to see the outcome on, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's whatever that has to deal with what you want an abundance of. Speak it into existence. See what happens. Write it into existence. See what happens. And I look forward to hearing or reading about what you got from this video. What book has led you to be your own inspiration? Share that with me so I can take a look at it as well. As a matter of fact, if you still want to continue to hear about how these books can be a reflection upon your life, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I would love to hear from you. So subscribe to me. This is CNotes. My name is Sharvie. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you on next episode. Bye.